Let's move on to our next segment, another Fireside chat on the topic business model innovation through servitization, aftermarket thinking. The concept of servitization has been discussed since a few years now. However, the real progress, acceleration, and innovation of the model is happening now. This session will discuss how organizations can develop and adapt their business models through servitization, the move to the services innovation mindset, and the customer at the heart of all this move. Our speakers for this session are Suresh Venkatarayalu, Chief Technology Officer, Honeywell, and Eric Bowman, Chief Technical Officer, TomTom. And chairing this session is Gopichand Katragadda, Founder and CEO, Myelin Foundry. Gopichand is the founder and CEO of Myelin Foundry, an AI company with a vision to transform human experiences and outcomes in wellness and media and entertainment. He's also an independent director of Bosch India Limited. He's also the vice president of IET, Board of Trustees UK, and a member of the NASSCOM Governing Council for the Center of Excellence for Data Science and AI. Pleasure to have you all here with us this evening, and over to you, Gopichand.
Thank you, Justin. And it's fantastic, wonderful being given the opportunity to moderate this panel with Suresh and Eric. Suresh and Eric represent the industry from different parts of the verticals. Suresh is the CTO for Honeywell, and Eric the CTO for TomTom. Honeywell is a broad-based industrial company, and TomTom, amongst other things, works with location as a service. So eagerly looking forward to hearing their thoughts. Today, we are going to be spending time on servitization. And for those of you who are hearing this phrase for the first time, it is everything as a service. That's where we are headed. So the servitization is part of that. So product as a service, aftermarket as a service. So we'll be discussing these aspects. I'd like to get us kicked off by sharing a few thoughts of my own before requesting my panelists to share their thoughts. So the future of services is what we're going to be talking about. And I come from a GE background. I cut my teeth in GE General Electric, 12 years there when it was at its peak of creating these models around servitization. I'm sure Eric and Suresh, you would be familiar with the models around aircraft engines, the leasing models, the contractual service agreements of the energy world, and so on. So I do come from a place where I have some understanding, as well as the fact that the technologies which are going to feed into the next age of servitization are really here and now and make it even more possible. So I'll be looking at Suresh and Eric to give us some thoughts around that. I just wanted to put it up and say that, look, just like any other area, the future of services is going to be driven by the trends, geopolitical trends and consumer trends. We know that the geopolitical trends these days have been dominated by, of course, the pandemic, but not to forget climate change, terrorism closely behind in terms of the recency effect, but otherwise it's always there. And it drives some of the industrial decisions as well, be it security in the aircraft, in the security in the airport, and so on. Consumer trends, social distancing is something which is newer, but all others have been there for some time. Premiumization drives services, and various other verticals have taken a new avatar as we look into the world, into the future. And so the fact is that while many of us technologists want to push technology, most of us companies will go right to left, which is understand the trends and then understand the market needs and pull in the technologies which will serve those market needs. And the market needs vary depending on whether it's a B2B industrial need or a B2C need from the consumer. And I listed a few here. Instant remote diagnostics, real-time intelligence, remote maintenance, maintenance as a service. These are things I'm sure Suresh will talk about. Mobility as a service, and the fact that location and maps form part of that is something I'm sure Eric will talk about. And the technologies which will feed into this is not just the digital tech. We always need to look at it as an intersection of technologies, digital, biology, and materials is where the action will be. Biology, you wonder why, but if you're looking at wellness as a service, you better bring in biology. And there are many other reasons why biology is important. The future, none of us can say that, well, we are engineers and we don't need to know biology. Materials is going to be part of it in various aspects of services. So with that introduction, I would like to bring on the panelists and really hear from them. And Suresh and Eric, I look forward to your thoughts, but I would like to get each one of you to discuss your views on servitization, and maybe given the topic today, a little bit of thoughts around aftermarket would also be useful. So Suresh, let's start with you and then we'll come to Eric.
Thanks, Gopi. I think it's a very, very relevant topic, and thank you for inviting me as part of the NASSCOM Summit. In general, servitization, I sometimes refer that as SaaS, refers to the industries using their products to sell outcome as a service, which is pretty much where you were actually highlighting and referring with a number of examples you had. Rather than selling a physical product or a service, that's what the traditional industries have done, or how we make money today. Manufacturing business, very similar to like us, offer a number of different services today. Early days in SaaS, which is digital supplementing the traditional products and services. The primary focus had been for us is maintenance, asset upkeeping, maximizing throughput, and those are the kind of high-level pieces that we have been driving. So in our specific industry and also specific to Honeywell, we are building software or SaaS products ranging from, let me give you some few examples today. One, in the supply chain industry, we are driving asset health and monitoring, diagnostic, predictive monitoring, ensuring that the asset downtimes are limited so that you indirectly impact their top line and bottom line. Predictive maintenance and autonomous operation, we see a huge potential and need in our process solution industry. We used to be a control system company. We are virtualizing the control system. The algorithms used to be pretty much hard-coded. Now it's self-learning, deep learning, and reinforced algorithms changing dramatically. Asset and worker optimization, both in supply chain industry, warehouse automation space, and also in plant operation. We see a huge shift from just selling basic DCS and control systems. We are speaking about throughput performance, outcome performances, and changing the dynamics and narrative with them. And then augmented with that, things like cybersecurity with IT and OT, convergence, and also environmental clean air and sustainability. So these are the few examples that have shifted the core products that we used to sell. We used to say we have aerospace, building technology, safety and productivity and performance material. Now slowly we are evolving into a solution solving the most complex problem for our customers and changing the value equation for them. So that's my perspective. It's a pretty relevant topic, and I think it's a changing dynamic.
Thanks, Suresh. You did mention cybersecurity, IT, and OT. Of course, that has at its backdrop digital and digital transformation, and there's a significant advantage for the folks who understand digital very well to bring services to their customers, X as a service. So could you just touch upon that from a Honeywell perspective?
Interestingly, Gopi, cybersecurity is well understood from a CIO and CSO world, but predominantly our infrastructure tools had been there to protect our IT infrastructure. But once we started really shipping out our edge devices, which we call OT, and the OT, the edge devices had been vulnerable. As you start really deploying this in your customer base, it used to be a thick wall that CIOs were managing their network and IT switches and gateways and routers. But when it came to the devices, that was behind the wall. And I think that opened up in a big way. So we've actually built up a cybersecurity practice. What they're really doing is really blending those gateways from a OT and IT and asking what should be our core foundational technology that we have an ability to really get into protecting the assets for our customers, even for ourselves, because when we actually get into outcome as a service, I think we are responsible to protect our assets from any vulnerability in the future. So IT-OT convergence, building a security platform and tools are new ways of getting there.
Yeah, one of the things, Suresh, is of course the walls between departments as well. So you have IT and the data science folks sitting in the headquarters typically, and then you have the operations teams, the plant workers who want to see their data there and not really interested in fancy graphs which are being produced at the headquarters. So do you see those barriers going away in an industrial setting, or the edge device is playing the moderator?
No, the barriers are there, and we are carefully trying to ask the question. This is not a question on centralization and decentralization. We have to allow the independence and innovation happening in a subgroup. I think we've gone through two big pendulum like any company, but I think we're getting to the point right now. We understand data standardization and standards and policy standardization is critical, but really embed those framework and playbook at every product line group or a system design groups altogether. That's what we're driving at this juncture. I would call a more of a hybrid approach rather than taking extreme steps.
Yeah, thanks, Suresh. We'll come back to you. Eric, if we can hear your thoughts, please, and from your perspectives at TomTom and otherwise as well.
Yeah, thanks. And it's a real pleasure to be here. And Suresh, couldn't agree more with some of the things that you said, starting with the idea of outcome as a service. And so often as technologists, we become kind of enamored with our technical solutions to individual problems, but we too often have sort of failed to see the bigger problems that we're really trying to help people solve. And so, one of the driving forces behind the idea of servitization and thinking in terms of outcome is really around thinking very strongly in terms of customer value and specific customer outcomes and customer empathy. And really, rather than trying to find sort of the solution to nice problems, but really deeply understanding what are the problems that our customers have, and how can we think holistically about trying to solve those problems, not just purely through technology, but also by understanding their processes and also, identifying where there are economies of scale across multiple customers, opportunities for partnerships, data sharing, knowledge sharing, and a much less of kind of a zero-sum thinking, which I think really dominated industry in the 20th century, and much more toward collaborative problem solving, both for customer value, but also, increasingly for the good of society as a whole.
So Eric, could you share some examples from what you're doing currently as to how that manifests itself in terms of collaborative problem solving and servitization?
Yeah, we have a few examples of that. One pretty big part of our business is supplying navigation software into the automotive industry. And, with the explosion of smartphones, we've seen the kind of app ecosystem really open up, and the economies of scale around developing applications that maybe 1 billion people will use, and the opportunities for sort of learning from customers is several orders of magnitude higher than what's possible when you're creating a product for automotive, where there might just be a few million sold. And so, I think one of the things that makes it possible for people to buy modern automobiles is the entire automotive supply chain, which is kind of a thing of wonder in a way, and it's enabled so much technology to arrive in the car, but it's not necessarily the right mechanism for how to develop products that are really kind of empathetic toward the problems that people are trying to solve. And so, very often people use the built-in navigation software in a car a few times for the first month, and then they fall back to their phone or whatever. And what we're seeing is that by taking a much more kind of product-centric approach and working with our OEM partners to really figure out what are the jobs to be done, for drivers, instead of historically it was a little bit more of like a checkbox exercise, and do we have this many points of interest, this many roads in the map? Much more, what is the experience that people need to have while driving? And I think through kind of the advance in technology, but also our ability to kind of amortize our investments across different customers, we're able to bring quite a bit more to that conversation than we could in the past. And a lot of that has to do from thinking about this much more as a service that we provide to automotive customers, rather than just sort of, a drop-in feature-less checkbox set of stuff that sort of works. That's one example. Another example is, when you look at the whole rideshare and delivery economy, where there are, many routes that have to be planned, for example, and it's a really hard optimization problem. Some of the pioneers in this space invested quite a lot in their location technology, because the upside to even small optimizations can have significant impact on their revenue. But there's a limit to what any one of them can do on their own. And so more and more what we see is that they're really comfortable sharing much more data with us, for example, and working together so that we can solve what is kind of a common problem. And then many more of our customers benefit from the kind of shared knowledge from different customers and the experience we're able to bring to bear, solving a common problem, but also, ideally, not always, being able to handle some of their specific cases as well.
So the monetization and your business model would be interesting for the audience listening in, because it is going to be different than your traditional you pay for your product, or you pay for your product and there's an AMC, or you pay for your product and then there is an aftermarket. You probably are monetizing differently.
Yeah, I mean, our monetization strategy varies quite a bit depending on the industry and depending on the product. We have a pretty wide range of products for different industries, and some of them have very, very different dynamics. So we have to be pretty flexible in terms of what works within that industry. But increasingly, we try to get into a more kind of transactional model that scales a little bit better than prepaying for say for capacity, for example.
Eric, would the emergency services, for example, fall into an area that you would consider as part of your service? By that I mean that there's a breakdown and there's a location involved, and you have to call the appropriate service provider. Yeah,
I mean, emergency service is definitely covered by us, although I wouldn't say it is our focus. It's it's kind of a high risk area where safety is a particular concern, and that can be quite expensive. But that's an area, again, where I think partnerships and alliances work better than trying to do kind of an individual product that's a bit more limited.
Thanks, Eric. I would like both of you to comment about the risks involved in outcomes as a service model. Like I said earlier, I've been part of the GE journey, and it was actually very lucrative, because the kind of equipment that we were leasing out, or we were providing services on, were equipment only we understood. So if it's a gas turbine, there are very few people in the world who understood gas turbines the way we did, and an aircraft engine even more so. So we could really hold the audience and make it lucrative for ourselves, while also providing a benefit to the customers, because they're not paying a huge upfront cost, and we were financing and providing other aspects of the business, which made it convenient for the customers to focus on their core. But I can think about it now and say that there are a lot of risks, and you're taking on long-term contracts, sometimes 25-year contracts, and there are definitely risks involved with that. So Suresh, will start with you.
Yeah, it's a it's an interesting and a right question, but it's been there for a while, Gopi, right? When you really look at from a risk in this model, let's really understand the SaaS and servitization model. I think very important for us to understand what is SaaS, which is scalable software that can drive recurring revenue, and which is not in an industry like us, a lot of embedded software that we have built, on-prem software that we have built, and which is not, because traditionally the guys who had been successful is those enterprise software companies. Either they're already SaaS or they're moving into SaaS. They are the folks who are winning right now. There are 2 or 3 risks that I actually see. Number one, traditional manufacturing firms like us, we carry a lot of technical debt. Meaning, it is easy to say, let me really build a cloud infrastructure, let put a plumbing back and really offer a new stuff. It is very, very difficult. So one is to understand the technical debt. The cost of cloud migration and adoption is also a bigger aspects. Then exposing your control system or critical infrastructure from a security standpoint. Then the whole cost of data transaction, cost of data migration. And then the last thing that I would actually say is there is a heavy investment that is absolutely required. One, to build and to transition your company from just being a industrial to a software industrial. That's a journey. Second, commercial side. Commercially, a lot of company like us, Gopi, we were a B2B company. We were dealing with a lot of distributors and middlemen. Now, in a SaaS-based business, you have to start probably reaching out to enterprise customers. You're actually starting to reaching to the end customers, end users. It's a big shift. Your go-to-market changes. Your kind of a conversation on enterprise SaaS selling changes. That entire capability doesn't kind of exist overnight. It has to be built. The muscle has to be built. And then to really rewire the company to actually win or deliver a SaaS delivery, I actually put it under the 3 categories. One is to really build a recurring subscription business model based economy, basic metrics about users onboarding metric, data onboarding metric, sites onboarding metric, really getting a good access around the KPI business metrics for your customers and the insights that you have promised. Because then you're starting to really link your SaaS product value chain. That's a very, very important. That's an element that we are learning every single day. And then the second element is the reason I kind of talked about technical debt is you got to have a contemporary infrastructure for automated cloud deployment, automated upgrades, 24/7, the customer experience that matters. So we are starting to really look at these things to say, look, there are groups said we will migrate there, and we are starting to realize they can't do it. It's a company level initiative, a long-term vision, a capability upgrade and build up, both on commercial, technical, and then there's a company's culture to adopt and drive the transition to be winning. So it's a journey. We are going through it. And that's how I'll characterize the risks that everybody and anybody should be validating all the time.
No, I love it, Suresh. It is definitely a journey. And typically in that journey, you find that the factories are always behind where we're thinking technology can take them. And there are risks which are very real. For example, you mentioned asset health monitoring. And if there is a defect which has been missed, and now you not only have missed it, but you have a digital record that you should have actually caught it. So those are risks which we have to get better at handling as we move forward. But this journey is on, and we are going in a particular direction. So while we talk about the everything as a service model, outcome as a service model, I'm curious, the customers are not necessarily having their departments designed to accept this kind of a service from the vendors, right? So Eric and Suresh, maybe I'll start with Eric. How easy do you find it to sell something as a service versus saying, here's the product, it'll last for 3 years and this is what you pay, or it'll last for 20 years and this is what you'll pay for service after 3 years, something like
Yeah, I think it gets easier. We have a similar problem, especially in our automotive business, where we do need to make commitments that, last 5, 10, 15, 20, even 25 years, although that's rare. And, on the one hand, that requires kind of a high bar around the architecture of what we're doing, and to be able to maintain that kind of stability while still being evolvable is really, really hard. But ultimately, if you're too stuck in that model, it becomes extremely hard to kind of compound value and iterate and improve. And of course, that's what we want to do, but more and more, that's what our customers want to do as well. So we see increasing openness to kind of a more frequent iteration cycle. Certainly, our business is quite data heavy, and moving data around is expensive and it needs to change a lot. And so that tends to push us very naturally into more of a SaaS model. And you're essentially sending the compute to the data rather than trying to send the data to be computed upon by customers. And so that simplifies it in a way. But ultimately, it depends a lot on the market, and it's basically kind of a hand-holding exercise as we iterate toward truly understanding, what is the value of being able to iterate a little bit faster, improve things rather than stick to commitments that are made years ago. And even 2 or 3 years ago, these conversations were harder than they are now. I think the pandemic has probably helped accelerate a lot of digitization plans, but for the most part, everybody starts to understand more all the time, kind of the benefits of the sort of DevOps mindset that we everything is moving so fast. No matter what industry you're in, if you really want to compete, you also have to move fast, and it's in our mutual interests to be able to move faster together.
Thank you. I'll request Suresh and then you, Eric, to comment on, if you were to advise an industry on what are the key things to look at when they're moving from a product model to a services model, what would it be? Suresh, you first, and then Eric.
I think one of the learning that I have, Gopi, which is also connected with Eric's response in the previous question, the discussion here has to elevate. We are learning has to elevate from operations to a CXO level, because you got to connect the outcome with economics of the business. You have to connect the dots, outcomes with top line and bottom line of the business. So it is important, and we are absolutely pushing our discussions nowadays to start with the CXO level to say, can we even frame the business problems well? Can we actually define what the solution scope might be? Can we actually understand how these digital technologies could actually impact your top line and bottom line? And basically, we start with a pilot with the shorter sprints, the 90 days, to say, can we really prove the value and impact, which is economic and financial model? I think that's going to be the new start, new beginning, Gopi. And this change starts people like me and companies' executive staffs are pretty much, we are selling our product. We are selling our solution, our product. And we are on the ground trying to prove the hypothesis. The days are done where your frontline sales can actually sell your product and walk away with a traditional way. And I think this is an area that I would actually say need a big shift. Technologies are there. I think we will absolutely buy or build, but it's going to be commercial, and selling SaaS product requires a very different headset and thinking. Thanks,
Suresh. Very keen insights. And Eric, over to you. And then we'll wrap up. It's a 25-minute session. I wish it was longer, but after Eric's comments, we'll wrap up.
Okay. Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is it's not, for me, it's not services or product. It's really the service is the product. And, where that gets hard is that it really, in terms of when you're trying to think about outcomes, it's so important to be so connected to the flow of value in SaaS. And that requires being connected to a level of detail, which in the past was perhaps it was always a good idea, but it was much harder. And I think the digital world makes it easier at the C level to understand more of the details about what's really going on, and that is incredibly key. And I think I very often go back to the very famous book from the 1980s, The Goal, which I still recommend highly to anyone entering the industry now. That one of the key messages is how technology and software really allow us to see end-to-end value streams in a way that was not previously possible, and that the difference between individual steps of a process that are sort of locally optimizing and really maybe being very cost efficient, but very blind to the opportunities for global optimization, especially on behalf of customers, it's still a complete game changer. Yeah. And what SaaS enables is flow of value that can be 10, 100,000, 100,000 times higher than before. And it really defies human intuition, what becomes possible through API level integration and with cloud technology. So, everyone, whether they've been in the industry for a long time or they're just starting out, should sort of constantly question their intuitive understanding of what's actually possible on behalf of customers. And I can't stress enough the importance of applying product thinking, and especially the kind of jobs to be done thinking, and the idea of really empathy for what your customer is trying to achieve, and how powerful it is to be able to focus kind of end to end in a value stream in that way. That it really is, it's a game changer for humanity that we're able to do this, and it happens kind of bit by bit, but we forget what it was like just a few years ago, before smartphones, before satellite navigation. And we've accelerated so many different kind of convenience factors in life. And now, as we really get up to speed, I think we can meaningfully start to tackle things like climate change and some of the really difficult social challenges we face.
Thanks, Eric. I'll wrap up with a few comments summarizing what you have both shared with the audience. We started talking about collaborative problem solving. Servitization would bring that ability to solve problems together. It is a journey, and today there is a customer openness to this model. They understand, especially data drives the thinking, that compute has to come closer to the data, and it opens up the servitization model even better. We talked about the fact that in order to make this successful, we have to elevate the discussion, CXO to CXO conversations to lead the way. Service is the outcome, service is the product, and flow of value is something that we need to keep a tab on, and we can provide, I think I heard it, 100,000 times the value using this model. I think it's a wonderful set of comments which the audience can take a lot from and learn from. Thank you, Suresh. Thank you, Eric, for this discussion.
Gopi, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you. And back.
Thank you, Gopichand, and to our speakers, Eric and Suresh, for that fireside chat on the topic business model innovation through servitization, aftermarket thinking. Thank you once again for that brilliant discussion.